Cecilia, a smart and independent young woman, had left her home country of Brazil to embark on an exciting new chapter in Australia. She quickly found stability there, securing a steady job, making new friends, and entering a relationship that would ultimately shatter all her dreams. In April 2018, Cecilia attended a gathering with friends, enjoying a fun evening together. As the night came to an end, she said her goodbyes, promising to stay in touch before heading home. None of them could have imagined that it would be the last time they saw her alive. A few days later, the shocking discovery was made. Cecilia's lifeless body was found floating face down in the shallow waters of a river. Cecilia Haddad had moved to Australia over a decade ago. Her journey started in Perth, but she later relocated to New South Wales, where she worked as a logistics manager for a transportation company. By 2016, she had settled in Sydney, continuing her career with a mining and logistics firm in Western Australia. Cecilia was a happy and hard-working woman, passionate about ballet and diving. As a successful corporate executive, she had a bright future ahead of her. However, she found herself trapped in an emotionally abusive relationship. Cecilia hadn't come to Australia alone. She was accompanied by Marcelo Santoro, a friend she had known for nearly a decade, someone she had gone to university with in Brazil. What began as friendship gradually turned into romance. Cecilia fell deeply in love with Marcelo, but what started as a loving relationship soon turned into a nightmare. Over time, the jealousy and possessiveness of her partner became unbearable, and in early 2017, she made the decision to end the relationship. Unfortunately, Marcelo refused to accept the breakup. Though they had been separated for several months, they continued to live under the same roof. The situation became intolerable, and Cecilia started to fear for her safety. She asked Marcelo to leave the house, but he refused and began threatening her, insisting they should get back together. His behavior escalated to the point of stalking her in public. Cecilia's friends grew increasingly concerned and begged her to go to the police, but she hesitated. She had confided in her friends that Marcelo had once forced his way into her apartment. Terrified, she barricaded herself in her bedroom, shouting at him to leave while he pounded on the door, demanding to talk. About 10 days before her tragic end, Cecilia warned Marcelo that if he didn't leave the apartment, she would call the police. When it became clear that he had no intention of cooperating, Cecilia moved in with friends, feeling safer almost 3,000 miles away. Despite their pleas for her to report Marcelo to the authorities, she remained adamant that he would never physically harm her. She didn't want him to face legal trouble or deportation, as he was a fellow Brazilian. All she wanted was for him to leave her home. Sadly, her kind heart led to a tragic outcome. Marcelo was not the man Cecilia thought he was, and he was capable of causing her great harm. After spending several days away from her home, Cecilia felt safe enough to return. She had discovered that Marcelo had booked a flight back to Brazil, and with him thousands of miles away, she believed she would be out of danger. Early on the morning of April 28, 2018, she returned to her apartment. To her horror, Marcelo hadn't left. He pounded on her door, demanding to be let in, but Cecilia refused, unaware that he had a copy of her key. After waiting outside her building for several hours, Marcelo used the key to enter her apartment and ended Cecilia's life. Her friends became alarmed when she stopped responding to their messages. They had made plans for the weekend, but Cecilia never showed up. She also missed a scheduled meeting with a disabled client she cared for, which was unlike her. Fearing the worst, her friends reported her disappearance to Australian authorities and notified her family in Brazil. Cecilia's brother, João Haddad, contacted Marcelo's mother, who initially claimed her son was not in Brazil. However, just 5 minutes later, Marcelo called João, confirming that he was indeed in Brazil. Something didn't add up. Shortly after this strange interaction, Marcelo's mother called again, admitting that her son was in Brazil and was on medication. João's suspicions were confirmed when he overheard Marcelo in the background, instructing his mother on what to say. Sadly, there was nothing they could do to save Cecilia. Days after her disappearance, the 38-year-old's body was found by rowers in a river about 5 miles from her apartment. Initially, the police did not suspect foul play, thinking it was a tragic accident. However, after Cecilia's red Fiat was found abandoned at a train station, about 7 miles from where her body was discovered, a murder investigation was launched. Someone had used her car to flee, and all eyes were on the one person capable of causing her harm. Authorities revealed a chilling discovery. Someone had weighed down Cecilia's body with gym weights in her pants pockets, hoping to sink her to the bottom of the lake and erase her existence forever. When her friends heard the heartbreaking news, they were shocked and devastated, but also consumed with guilt. They regretted not reporting Santoro to the police sooner. Cecilia's tragic death left everyone shattered. According to the thousands of messages reviewed by the Australian police, along with statements from friends and family, Cecilia had ended her relationship with Marcelo Santoro, but he refused to accept it. Just 36 hours after Cecilia's death, Santoro had flown to his home in Rio de Janeiro, immediately becoming the prime suspect. The police spent months analyzing evidence to build a solid case against Santoro. There was overwhelming evidence against him. Security footage showed him driving Cecilia's car, and traces of sand and vegetation from the area where her body was found were discovered inside the vehicle. Detectives also uncovered crucial footage from cameras installed in Santoro's apartment. These recordings allowed them to track his movements in the 48 hours leading up to and following the murder. The detectives used cell towers to track Santoro's phone, comparing its movements with surveillance footage collected from homes and businesses along his route. The analysis revealed that his phone connected to a tower near the lake before reaching the final location. The police believed that Santoro had driven around searching for a place to dispose of the body, eventually finding a secluded area along the waterfront. According to their theory, Santoro strangled Cecilia in her apartment's kitchen, then dumped her body in the water. The next morning, he fled to Rio de Janeiro. Despite the overwhelming evidence, the extradition process complicated matters, as Australia's extradition treaties with Brazil meant that Santoro could not be immediately arrested and charged for the murder in Sydney. This led to an international manhunt involving Interpol and high-level negotiations between the two countries. Finally, on July 7, 2018, Brazilian police arrested Marcelo Santoro, 40, at his sister's apartment in a neighborhood in the southern zone of Rio. In a brief hearing, Santoro claimed that he had planned to fly from Australia to Brazil in May, but had moved up the flight due to his father's health issues. The timing of Cecilia's death and his sudden departure raised investigators' suspicions, and no one believed his alibi. The authorities were determined to ensure that Santoro faced justice. Santoro remained in one of Brazil's highest security prisons following his arrest. It wasn't until 5 years later, in June 2023, that his trial finally began. Flanked by armed guards and wearing a white shirt and blue pants, Santoro informed the judge that he had changed his legal team, surprising the prosecutors and detectives who had flown from Sydney to Rio to present evidence. The switch delayed the trial by several months. When it finally resumed, Santoro, for the first time, addressed the court, insisting that his return to Rio had been planned in advance. His new lawyer argued that Santoro had flown back to Brazil because his father was undergoing heart surgery. Security footage presented to the jury confirmed that Santoro had been in Cecilia's apartment the day she was murdered. The reconstruction of events showed that on April 29th, Santoro ordered a car through a rideshare app at a station in the suburb. The driver confirmed this and provided information about the route, which included a stop at a gas station. There, a camera captured Santoro withdrawing money from an ATM, a transaction verified by the bank. After collecting the cash, Santoro returned to the car and asked the driver to take him to Sydney Airport. Initially, the driver hesitated to alter the planned route, but Santoro offered him $50 to continue to the airport. They drove across the bridge over the river, where Santoro had likely disposed of the body just hours earlier. As they passed the spot, Santoro asked the driver to stay in the left lane. While there, the driver saw Santoro lower the window and throw something out. He thought it was a set of keys. The journey continued and they arrived at Sydney Airport at 7:23 a.m., sealing Santoro's escape to Brazil. During the trial, Santoro maintained a stern expression, avoiding interaction with others and only responding to questions from his lawyer. A police investigator testified that, in informal conversations while in custody, Santoro had confessed to the details of the crime. According to the officer, Santoro admitted to having a heated argument with Cecilia and strangling her until she died. He then left the apartment, returning 2 hours later to dispose of her body in a river. In his testimony, the detective added that Santoro had said he was recounting the story informally and would only provide an official statement in the presence of a lawyer. However, once he had legal representation, Santoro refused to answer further questions. After this testimony, Cecilia's father took the stand. He recalled how Cecilia had called him just weeks before the crime, telling him that her ex-boyfriend was following her and that she was afraid because he had been entering her apartment without permission. On one occasion, she came home from work to find him inside. She asked for her keys back, but he refused. He also recounted a phone conversation with Cecilia the day before the murder, during which she kept him on the line while she entered her apartment, fearing Santoro might be there. Once she confirmed he was not inside, she ended the call. Cecilia's stepmother testified next, saying that Cecilia had been suffering from psychological abuse for a long time. Andrea recalled a tearful phone call from Cecilia who said, "I can't live like this anymore." The final testimony came from Cecilia's brother, João Haddad, who described Santoro as threatening. He said that his sister lived in constant fear of what Santoro might do. Santoro would frequently monitor her, take her phone and computer, and she had blocked him on all social media platforms. She had started communicating with him only through email, writing in English so there would be a record that Australian authorities could easily understand. João also testified that he had asked his sister several times why she didn't force Santoro to leave or call the police. She responded that she was afraid of retaliation and felt guilty because Santoro was unemployed at the time. Santoro faced up to 30 years in prison, but he would never serve his sentence in Australia, as Brazil does not extradite its citizens. After several days of trial, Santoro finally confessed to the crime. In a chilling admission before the Brazilian court, he took responsibility for Cecilia's death and provided disturbing details of the attack. Tearfully, Santoro revealed that he had gone to Cecilia's apartment without her permission, where an argument ensued. In a moment of rage, he strangled her to silence her. He squeezed her neck so tightly that she collapsed. At that moment, he realized she was lifeless, but couldn't remember if she had hit her head when she fell. Panicking, he lifted her onto the sofa and tried to revive her, but she never woke up. Cecilia's mother was forced to leave the courtroom as Santoro recounted the grim details. Her brother, sitting in the front row, shook his head in disbelief, struggling to comprehend how this monster had taken his sister away. Santoro apologized to Cecilia's family, but his hollow words of remorse were not accepted by her loved ones. Before the sentencing, Cecilia's mother, wearing a white shirt with her daughter's picture on it, addressed the court, stating that Santoro was not a human being, but a monster who deserved to be imprisoned. The federal court in Rio de Janeiro sentenced Marcelo Santoro, a Brazilian engineer, to 27 years in prison for aggravated homicide, asphyxiation, femicide, and concealment of a body. The verdict was delivered by a jury of 6 women and 1 man. After the sentencing, Santoro's lawyer announced plans to appeal in hopes of reducing the sentence. For Cecilia's friends, the verdict provided only a small sense of relief. They expressed doubt that Santoro felt any true remorse for what he had done to their friend. They reflected on the loss of a daughter, an aunt, a sister, and a friend who could never be replaced. They hoped that now, at last, Cecilia can rest in peace. Cecilia Haddad's family and friends, having witnessed firsthand the horrors of domestic violence, hope that her tragic story can serve as a lesson to others. For them, Cecilia was never the face of domestic abuse. She was a strong, independent woman. Unfortunately, they came to realize the harsh reality faced by many women worldwide who are victims of violence at the hands of those who claim to love them. Her family urges people not to ignore the signs of abuse and violence. Though they tried to protect her, they now know it was never enough. They trust that authorities and justice will intervene where they could not. Above all, they hope that Cecilia's story will raise awareness and inspire action to prevent other victims from suffering the same fate. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.